Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris Trapasso here for Week 7's edition of All 32. The show, if you're new here, this is the show that I jump around the entire NFL, and I'll give you a film observation, an advanced stat nugget, just a general take on a player or a trend that I've noticed on film or looking over all the analytics for all 32 teams. Last week, Week 6 edition of All 32, I started with the NFC side, so today I will start with the AFC side of things. I go division by division, and once this live stream is done, I will go back and see where I started talking about all 32 teams, and I will write a timestamp in the description. So if you're seeing this afterward, after the live stream, you can just wait and go down to the description and find your team, click on that little clickable timestamp, and you will get right to the segment in which I give that 1 to 3 minute take on your team. All right, I'm going to start with the Buffalo Bills here on the Week 7 edition of All 32. The Buffalo Bills are an interesting club because they've battled some problems on offense and defense the last 2 weeks, but they are 4-2. They have Josh Allen, and they are coming off a bye to go travel to Charlotte to face the Carolina Panthers in Week 8. A Bryce Young-less Carolina Panthers in Week 8. He's suffered a high ankle sprain in that win in Week 7. So it's going to be Andy Dalton. And what I want to focus on with the Buffalo Bills, and being in the Western New York area, I've certainly heard all of the flaws that the media or fans believe that the Bills have. And they certainly have shown those flaws the last couple of weeks, and even earlier in the season when they started 4-0. What's really interesting to me about the Bills is right now, this team is second in the NFL in pressure rate at 43.3%. So they have generated a pressure on 43.3% of the opposing quarterbacks' dropbacks. But they are 14th in sacks. So there's a pretty big disparity there, and I'm a big believer, and this goes back to kind of a pretty common and widely accepted draft adage that disruption is production if we're talking about pass rushers or a team's pass rush in general. But certainly a sack is more valuable than just moving a quarterback off his spot. And I wonder if Larry Ogunjobi, the defensive tackle, the veteran defensive tackle that the Bills signed in free agency, who's been a decent player at times, but has certainly been there, done that. And more specifically, Michael Hoyt, who was the Bills' first signee in the free agent period, who was this movable chess piece in Los Angeles with the Rams to start his career, would play on the edge, would line up over the A gap and be a blitzer. If either of those two, not necessarily will be the reason that the Bills can get more quarterbacks on the ground, but will maybe make some of the roles for the Greg Rousseaus and the Joey Bosa's and the Deion Walkers and the Ed Olivers and AJ Epinezas be a little bit easier and change the roles a little bit. I kind of liken this to what happened last season when the Bills traded for Amari Cooper at the trade deadline. Cooper ultimately was not super successful individually, but he kind of bumped all of the other roles and kind of changed all the other roles for Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, the running backs out of the backfield, Mac Hollins. A lot of those other wide receivers suddenly were seeing more opportunities because of just the presence of Amari Cooper. Now, I get what you're thinking, Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi are really going to change things that much. They could keep Ed Oliver or Deion Walker or Daquan Jones, who got hurt during warmups before that Monday Night Football loss to the Atlanta Falcons. Greg Rousseau, keep them more fresh and give defensive coordinator Bobby Babich more of his defensive playbook to kind of sift through and see, maybe I can utilize this type of blitz with Michael Hoyt on the field that I didn't feel super comfortable utilizing before. So keep note of the fact that Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt will return for the Bills in Week 8, coming off their 6-game suspension for the performance-enhancing drugs violating the league's PED policy. Just take note of those two players being on the field. We have not seen them in Bills uniforms yet in the regular season. The Bills second in pressure rate, but 14th in sacks. Let's see if either of those two, just their mere presence, can generate more value for the Bills in terms of not just pressuring the opposing quarterback, but getting that quarterback to the ground. Second team here on All 32 in the AFC East, Miami Dolphins. I got to ask you, what do you think? Is this Tua's fault? Is it Mike McDaniel's fault? And who is ultimately going to be shown the door first? Obviously, it's a lot easier to just fire your head coach. You're not paying him as much as you're paying Tua Tagovailoa, who signed that contract extension, like around $50 million per year. To me, it's obviously a little bit of both. It's not just one singular person or element of this team. That is why this team is 1-6 and have just really become a shell of their former selves, where just 2 years ago they were, Tua was leading the league in passer rating, and it seemed like maybe not a super well-rounded team, but a team that you didn't want to face because they could put up points as well as any team in football. It's easier to let go of Mike McDaniel, but some of the throws that Tua was making in that loss to the Cleveland Browns were completely inexcusable. It didn't look like a quarterback that understood, I need to manipulate defenders with my eyes. I need to throw with anticipation. It was like he was not doing either of those two things, telegraphing throws over the middle, making the bad interception deep in his own end on a throw that he just can't make. He just can't throw that football kind of up for grabs or just not really care where the football is going. So to me, if Tua is benched, I don't know if that's ultimately the decision that's going to fix things in Miami. I don't know if firing Mike McDaniel after this week or after next week is ultimately the conclusion that would be the best for this organization. It's just they really went all in with McDaniel's diverse run game, the play action, the motion, and being a really good fit for Tua, who is kind of a unique quarterback that he can be hyper accurate. And Tua can throw with anticipation, but the arm strength deficiencies and the mobility deficiencies are really holding or will really hold back him in most offenses. I think it made sense to bring those two together and formulate a pair. And again, we saw success. It was mostly against not good teams and middle of the pack teams. It was really facing those better teams where the Dolphins struggled. But to me, we've really seen all of the limitations of Tua Tagovailoa. So I guess I don't really have a firm take on this, but to me, it's the combination of the two. I think Mike McDaniel will be an offensive coordinator or a run game coordinator somewhere next season, and that offense or run game will probably be damn good. Tua, on the other hand, I think all of his weaknesses and his flaws have been exposed. If he's really well protected, if he's pressured like under 30 or 25% of the time, which rarely happens in today's NFL, and he has an amazing group of wide receivers that are fast, that can separate, he can be a good quarterback. But isn't that true of like any quarterback in football, especially one that is deemed starter caliber? So to me, Tua is the one a little bit more so to blame than Mike McDaniel for what's happened, what's transpired this season, and really the downfall, the slow, and now, I mean, it happened slowly, but now it's just a complete abomination with the Miami Dolphins. New York Jets. I just think Tyrod Taylor should start. I mean, Justin Fields is younger, and if you're a Jets fan and you're holding out any hope, I don't know if you're holding out any hope for this season or the future or this new regime, Aaron Glenn, the new GM, sure, you could think, well, I'm just going to side with age and say, well, Justin Fields is still in his mid-20s. Like, I'd rather him be the quarterback than Tyrod Taylor, who is in his mid-30s and doesn't represent any of the future. But I think Tyrod Taylor can be that effective rich quarterback. We've seen him do that in Buffalo. We saw him do it for a few games with the Cleveland Browns. He's done it with so many different teams. And even though there will be times where you will understand the limitations of Tyrod, that he's not super aggressive throwing over the middle, his arm strength is good, not great, but he is a great runner, and he still is very athletic and will make defenders miss and will be that nuisance of a quarterback running for first downs on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, that I think they should just say, look, he's going to be the starter. We're going to look for our quarterback in next year's draft, but we want to move forward with him because he's the cheaper option. He is the clear, just bridge quarterback. There's no long-term future. Just given his age, I think the Jets should just go with Tyrod Taylor, because Justin Fields, I think you know what you have with him at this point. And really, at any stop in his NFL career to date, whether it was the lengthy audition that he got in Chicago. Last season in Pittsburgh with the Steelers, yes, I know the Steelers were like 4-1 or 4-2 with him as the starter, but he was him running that offense made it pretty one-dimensional, that it was first read, I don't like what I see, I'm going to run. And now what we've seen this season with him with the Jets, where he's gotten injured because he can't really avoid pressure, and he's running so frequently, scrambling just far too often, despite his really world-class athleticism at the quarterback spot. I think you know what you have with him, and you know that he's not going to be this Geno Smith type revitalization, Ryan Tannehill, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield type. You go with Tyrod Taylor and you play the season out, you take your lumps, and then you really try to build for 2026 and beyond. I know it might seem a little early to say that, because the Jets defense, I think, can still be pretty good. Sauce Gardner got dinged up last week. I just wonder if they trade anyone. You're probably not going to re-sign Breece Hall. I mean, Breece Hall is in his final season of his rookie deal after being a second-round pick just a few years ago. So he's not going to be back. You have Quinnen Williams, who's a really good player, signed to a long-term extension. Quincy Williams, his brother, great player. Jamie Sherwood's playing really good football. Will McDonald is a great player. But I just wonder if there'll be sellers, which I talked about this last week. But regardless of that, I think the Jets should just start Tyrod Taylor for the remaining portion of the 2025 season. And the last team in the AFC East, the New England Patriots. Hats off to this Mike Vrabel and Drake May-led team. They had the unenviable schedule wrinkle of 3 consecutive road games, and they won all 3. And I don't want to say they won them all in convincing fashion, because they squeaked by the Bills in Orchard Park. They held off a pesky Saints team in the Superdome, but then they throttled the Tennessee Titans, as they should have. I mean, they are just clearly one of the worst rosters in football with a rookie quarterback. Yes, number 1 overall pick quarterback, but a rookie quarterback. They handle their business. But everything's coming up roses for the Patriots, and rightfully so. They have a half-game lead over the Bills. They're 5-2. The Bills are 4-2. They have the tiebreaker currently over the Bills, leading the AFC East entering Week 8. Like, that is a dream scenario if you're the Patriots. If someone would have told any Patriots fan at the beginning of the season, hey, entering Week 8, you're going to be ahead of the Bills in the AFC East, they would have gladly taken it. I do want to point out, because I want to stay as objective as possible here, they are last in rush EPA per play entering Week 8. Now, you can take that both ways. You can say, well, that's ultimate proof that it doesn't really matter how well you run the football, or it doesn't need to be a core element of a team. If you're passing it really effectively and efficiently, it doesn't really matter. But then you could also take it and say, well, once they start facing some good defenses, they play the Browns this week at home, and your run game is completely non-existent, it's going to put more pressure on your young quarterback. And as there's more film of tendencies of what Josh McDaniels likes to do, tendencies as to what Drake May likes to do inside the pocket, outside the pocket, you're going to have to eventually lean on the run game. You look at the last couple of Super Bowl winners and a lot of the best teams in football. For as much as I am a big core believer in, you win in today's NFL by throwing efficiently and stopping the pass. The Eagles were a great run team last year. The underrated element of the Patriots' back-to-back Super Bowls, Isaiah Pacheco, those 3 blockers on the inside of that offensive front. The Bills ran the football very well last season. The Washington Commanders ran the football very well. A lot of it was Jaden Daniels, but they could run the football. The Detroit Lions, the Minnesota Vikings, a lot of the best teams in football the last couple seasons have been able to, in the winter months, and after there's a lot of film out there on your quarterback and on your passing tendencies, can lean on the ground game. That is really one of the only concerns. I mean, the defense at times has not been great in New England, but that is like the main concern that I have for the Patriots on the cusp or after this 5-2 start, is that they are last in rush EPA per play entering Week 8. All right, moving to the AFC North now here on All 32, Week 7's edition of All 32. Thank you for joining in. Pittsburgh Steelers. I want to see more Jaylen Warren, which he's been getting like around 15 to 18 carries a game and with a few catches, like over 20 touches a game. Maybe that's like as much as you can expect out of a modern day feature back. And I get that. but he is forcing a missed tackle on over 30% of his rushes. I don't think at this point we should be viewing Jaylen Warren as a scat back. Oh, you want to get him 10 to 15 touches and throw him the ball 3 to 5 times, get him out in space. He has proven that with this opportunity, because Caleb Johnson has not really materialized yet, the bigger, more classically built feature back type that they picked in the 3rd round out of Iowa, he hasn't really materialized as someone that's going to threaten for carries. Jaylen Warren is a workhorse back. He can be someone that should be a focal point of this offense. We saw, obviously, on Thursday Night Football, it was more of the defensive issues, which kind of came as a surprise because the defense had played pretty well and got Alex Highsmith back. But I want to see more Jaylen Warren in a traditional running back role where there can be games where the Steelers give their defense a little bit of a rest and lean on the run game a little bit, especially when the offense has been a lot of DK Metcalf, some Calvin Austin before the injury. Pat Freiermuth had a big game against the Bengals, but beyond that, it's really been DK Metcalf, Aaron Rodgers. That's essentially it. Rodgers throwing the ball to their big acquisition at wide receiver. Jaylen Warren, to me, I don't want to say he's the most underrated back in the league because I think most people get how good he is, but or understand that he's not someone that should be a 3rd option, but I think he should be more of a focal point for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cincinnati Bengals. I have to give hats off to the offensive tackles, Orlando Brown and Amarius Mims, for the job. This is a perfect segue from that Steelers segment. For the job that they did against Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and TJ Watt in that Thursday night win, that crazy win, 34-31 or whatever it was, over the Pittsburgh Steelers to start week 7 last Thursday. TJ Watt's pressure rate in that game was just over 11%. And Alex Highsmith comes back from injury. A lot of Steelers fans are like, all right, we got Derek Harmon back. We got Alex Highsmith back. We got Watt. Herbig has looked great in Alex Highsmith's absence. Alex Highsmith had 1 pressure in that game. His pressure rate was just over 3%. So for as much criticism as the Bengals offensive line has gotten, and really a lot of it was justified, you have to pay your respects then when the offensive line steps up. And I thought Orlando Brown and Amarius Mims did a tremendous job against that 3-headed edge rushing monster that the Pittsburgh Steelers can throw at you. And I think that was a big reason why Joe Flacco in his first game was able to just sit back, find Jamar Chase 16 times for 16 catches in that game, get it to T. Higgins every once in a while, and ultimately score enough points to win that game. So that will be something that is worth monitoring over the next couple weeks or months. Can the Cincinnati Bengals offense keep Joe Flacco upright and keep Joe Flacco from not thinking about the pass rush? When Joe Flacco is just kind of operating in this state where he's just reading coverages, the arm strength is still there. He's seen every coverage and every blitz in the book over his 15 plus years in the NFL. We've seen him. We saw him do it a few years ago with the Cleveland Browns to get them to the playoffs. He can be a quarterback that can throw for 300 yards in a game. If he's worried about pressure and he has to, and then more so, if he has to try to elude pressure, things can get ugly pretty quickly. But Orlando Brown and Amarius Mims did a great job in week 7. And let's just see if they can continue that moving forward for suddenly a 3-4 Bengals team that I don't think too many folks want to play. I mean, the defense is a problem, but the offense we know can score a lot of points. Cleveland Browns here on All 32. We're on the AFC North. Quinshon Judkins, I got to talk about him with the Cleveland Browns. He is averaging 3.85 yards after contact per rush, which is the 6th highest rate among all qualifying running backs in the NFL. 3.85 yards after contact per rush. He comes off the 3-touchdown performance in the win over the Miami Dolphins, kind of a rain-soaked bad weather game in Cleveland. And that's coming not just for Cleveland, but in Philly and in Buffalo and in Pittsburgh and Baltimore and New York. And there's going to be, 40% of the league is going to start to deal with those bad weather games. And, great job by the Cleveland Browns offensive line, although the Dolphins, I don't think have a great defense, but I think the strength of their defense is up front with Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, Kenneth Grant, Chop Robinson. They did a good job moving people, but Quinshon Judkins is averaging almost 4 yards per carry after contact. So although I think every time I bring up Quinshon Judkins, I say there's no way if I were the rebuilding Cleveland Browns, I would have picked a running back in the top of the second round. But the early returns on this rookie running back have been really, really good. So good job, Quinshon Judkins. Good job, Cleveland Browns offensive line to get that second victory. It was very much an old school philosophy for the Browns to win that game. And the last team for the AFC North here on Week 7's edition of All 32, the Baltimore Ravens. Such a weird situation for this team. They're 1-5. They're coming off a bye week. They traded Odafe Owe before the bye. And I just wonder, and stop me if I've said this before, but I wonder where the pass rush is going to come from. Like they get Alohi Gilman from the Chargers. I like to add more stability next to Kyle Hamilton with Ardarius Washington not on the field to be that kind of pesky robber of a safety that can play in the slot, that can cover those quick slot receivers. Great, bring in a safety. But Odafe Owe was leading this Baltimore Ravens team with 12 pressures. Where's the pass rush going to come from? Kyle Van Noy, 6 pressures. Mike Green, 6 pressures. 6 pressures through 6 games for both of those players, which actually Kyle Van Noy was hurt. So maybe it was like 3 or 4 games for him. But I'm concerned, and I think almost everyone is expecting, hey, the Ravens, they're going to go on a run. They're going to win 5 or 6 in a row. They're going to be 6-5 before we know it. And maybe that's the case. And I think there is as good of a chance as that happening as you will see for a 1-5 team. Because with Lamar back healthy, presumably this week, Derrick Henry, I think, will eventually get it right. The offensive line will eventually get right. Zay Flowers has been good, but I think he can be better. Rashad Bateman and Isaiah Likely, I talked about them last week. They can be better. I just, though, wonder, is this Baltimore Ravens defense that has been completely gashed all season? We saw the turnaround last year, but do they have the horses to generate consistent pass rush after trading Odafe Owe? I'm not suggesting that trade was terrible, because if they weren't going to sign him to a contract extension, sure, you get a player for him, but maybe it will have to be very coverage and disguise defense based for the Baltimore Ravens to confuse quarterbacks, because I don't think too many quarterbacks they face down the stretch, and for them will be, the last 10 games of their season, are going to be dealing with too much pressure, because I just don't think they have the horses to generate consistent pass rush, especially on the outside. All right, that was AFC East, AFC North. We are now on the AFC South here on All 32, Week 7's edition of All 32. Just checking my notes here, who I want to start with. Let's start with the Indianapolis Colts. I thought Daniel Jones played really good in this most recent win for the Colts, but I will state and say that Daniel Jones still has a higher turnover-worthy play rate than big-time throw rate, which is a little alarming if you're a Colts fan, and you absolutely should be clinging to the 6-1 start, especially for how stagnant this team has been really since after Andrew Luck, and then afterward following that Phillip Rivers team that got to the playoffs and lost in the first round, which has been different quarterbacks, no efficiency offensively. It's really just been the run game, and that's it. The defense, But now, Jonathan Taylor, to me, he and Jackson Smith-Njigba are the 2 favorites for Offensive Player of the Year through 7 weeks of the season. The defense is forcing a lot of turnovers. I'm just a little concerned that Daniel Jones is coming off a very good game. The last 2 weeks, I thought he actually played his 2 best games of the season to date. But the turnover-worthy play rate is higher than his big-time throw rate. That's concerning. But, again, now I'm going to flip back to a positive. Daniel Jones' pressure to sack rate, you know what it is right now? 7.3%. This is a quarterback in Daniel Jones that's normally in the low 20s in pressure to sack rate. So he is getting pressured, but then only getting sacked on those pressures 7.3% of the time. And for context, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, in some seasons, Jalen Hurts, they're usually near the top of the league, and they're at 11, 12%. So for Daniel Jones, who we've seen him make some ridiculous gaffes under pressure, take bad sacks, fumble when he's with the Giants, to be at a pressure to sack rate, of 7.3%, that is a big reason why it feels like the Colts are staying ahead of the chains. They're not getting into second and longs. They're not getting into too many third and longs. Not only are they running the football awesomely, and the offensive line is very underrated. I highlighted their center, Tanner Bortolini, last week. Quentin Nelson's there, obviously. Braden Smith's there. A few weeks ago, I think I talked about their left tackle. They have a good offensive line, but a big reason I think beyond just the run game, which is obvious, is that Daniel Jones is not taking that many sacks. Pressure to sack rate of only 7.3%. So I don't want to say tread lightly with Daniel Jones, but I'm kind of getting to that point a little. Then again, if he is able to keep that pressure to sack rate like below 10%, which would be unfathomably low, then this team is going to stay on schedule and be able to kind of stay in that game script that they want, which is run the football, and then play action off of it and throw it to your Alec Pierces and your Ty Warrens down the middle of the field. Houston Texans. I'm a little bit concerned about some core elements of this team. Obviously, we saw them late last night. And it kind of feel like I saw Lindsey Rhodes from Sumer Sports was like, man, there's still another game, like starting with London on Sunday morning all the way until a 10 p.m. kick on the East Coast on Monday Night Football. Like, was this too much football? Which I kind of felt that, to be honest. I mean, I recorded the game and then watched it all this morning. But it was like, man, like after this game, there's another game and it's the Seahawks and the Texans. But in watching it, after two straight really good games for CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans offense, they really sputtered throughout that game. Like they started off like punt or something like that. They had the turnover to start or like early in the third quarter. But to me, like, not that this was ever a team that I felt was going to just ground and pound and be able to be like the Indianapolis Colts where they lean on the run game. They're 28th in EPA per rush. And I'll say right off the bat, you don't need to have a good run game to have an effective play action game. Like it's been proven with a bunch of studies. You just have to show the play action pass. So I'm not suggesting like, hey, they need to run it better so the play action game will be better for CJ Stroud. I just want there to be more to this offense than CJ Stroud in the shotgun or even CJ Stroud under center play actioning and trying to find Nico Collins on a dig route or a slant route. We saw Jalen Noel made a good catch down the field in that game. Dalton Schultz had one big catch. And last week I talked about like we were starting to see Xavier Hutchinson had two touchdowns the last 2 weeks. Jaden Higgins had a touchdown. Noel's making some plays in the return game and on offense. Dalton Schultz is a mid-tier solid tight end. I don't think this suddenly changes when Joe Mixon returns, but that's one concern that I have about this team. And I said it with the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers. You want to be able to have the ability to run the football in December and January. And for the Houston Texans, that's one back-to-back AFC Souths. Like, yes, they play in the dome, which maybe mitigates this problem a little or this concern a little. But you want to be able, if you need to go on the road at some point, they've lost those two road playoff games the last 2 years, you have to be able to run it. And I think Woody Marks, I was not a fan of him, both from the film or the analytics as a draft prospect. I thought they picked him way early. But he's been good in the receiving game. I just don't know if this team right now, how things are going with them as 28th in EPA per play on the ground, has the run game that you need. That it kind of sounds like a catch-22. Like I want you to be able to pass efficiently in today's NFL to succeed, but you still kind of have to be able to have some threat of the run game and just not even the threat, produce on the ground. And right now through 7 games, the Houston Texans have not been able to do that. Let's see. That was the Colts and the Texans. Jacksonville Jaguars. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, I cannot figure this team out. Like right when I'm tweeting like, man, Trevor Lawrence just is not it. 67 starts in, and I don't know what his strength is. I tweeted that during their most recent game. Like he's got a strong arm. He's pretty mobile. Those are the two, like, I guess you can call them strengths, but the two good parts of his game. But I don't really know. Like he doesn't have the best arm in the NFL. He's not the most mobile quarterback. He makes some funky decisions. He's not particularly great under pressure. He's not super accurate at any level of the field. But they get that win on Monday Night Football. That was like the biggest win that they've had in a long time over the Kansas City Chiefs, where Lawrence makes a great improvisational play where he falls down and gets into the end zone on a drive that he made a great bucket throw to Brian Thomas to set up that game-winning touchdown. But like they're 11th on defense in EPA per play allowed. They are 19th on offense in EPA per play. But the last 2 weeks after coming off this big high of beating Kansas City in primetime, like they just were flat 2 weeks ago, and they were super flat in London, a place that Trevor Lawrence and this organization have played every year. Like I don't want to call it a home game. I don't want to disrespect those Duval fans, but like they've been there. It's not, oh man, the time change was weird. We didn't know where to go. That's a comfortable environment for them. And Travis Hunter had his best game in the NFL, but 90% of it was in garbage time. So that is the team right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars, that I cannot figure out more than any other. Like Devin Lloyd, who I know didn't play this past week, but he's got the interceptions. You have Josh Hines-Allen, who to me is like a sneaky elite edge rusher. The secondary is maybe not great, but you have Brian Thomas Jr. Travis Etienne has surprised all of us that he's played really good football. The offensive line should be pretty good. You have Travis Hunter. And this team, I just can't figure it out. If you want to drop a comment or let me know like who this team is and what you expect down the stretch, because I cannot figure out the Jaguars. And the last team in the AFC South here on All 32, the Tennessee Titans. There's not much good to say about the Titans. I wish I could find something that's major that like, oh, they have this offensive tackle that's playing spectacularly and he's kind of a secret superstar. Don't really have that. They got embarrassed at home. They hung around with the Patriots for like 2 quarters. Cam Ward didn't have a great game again. The turnovers they're common with rookie quarterbacks, whether you're the first pick, the third pick, the 8th pick, whatever it is. They're very common. They're going to happen. You're going to look back on almost every rookie quarterback's first season, unless you're Stroud or Jaden Daniels, maybe Justin Herbert, and be like, oh yeah, that was a silly play. That was a bad turnover. What was he thinking there? And we've seen some of those quarterbacks ultimately become good players in the NFL. So I don't think all hope is lost for Cam Ward. But I did find one tiny, minuscule little nugget of positivity for the Tennessee Titans. Their second-round pick this year was Kevin Winston from Penn State, who 2 years ago looked like a surefire future first-round selection at safety at Penn State. Big, super fast, like barely missed any tackles, was great in coverage, just looked like that consummate, like strong safety, linebacker type, but who could cover. So he was going to be a first-rounder. Tears his ACL in the second game of the season last year. And the Titans, I think, figuring, look, we're a rebuilding team. We just picked a quarterback at number 1 overall. Let's pick Kevin Winston. We know he's not going to come back right away, but we're really more thinking of the long game here, which makes sense. Like that to me makes more sense than drafting a running back like the Browns did. Kevin Winston played 1 snap 2 weeks ago, and he played 2 snaps against the Patriots. And on those 2 snaps, one of which was a blitz, he got a very big hit on Drake May. So he has 1 quarterback pressure on 1 pass rush snap through his NFL career, 2 games in, 3 snaps in. So Kevin Winston, if you're a Tennessee Titans fan, you probably know him. Or if you happen to catch a Tennessee Titans game, maybe your favorite team or your team's biggest rival is facing the Titans, watch. I think he's number 23. Is he 23? He was 2 or 23 in college at Penn State. Don't quote me on the number, but Kevin Winston, it was like as explosive as I remember seeing him at Penn State on that corner blitz or the outside blitz. He was like kind of playing safety, playing in the slot. Super athletic, like 6'2", over 200 pounds. Keep an eye on Kevin Winston if you're a Tennessee Titans fan, because he's, to me, like the one glimmer of hope that this club has right now outside of Cam Ward. You've gotten some good play out of Alec A. Manor, the rookie, but I was just excited as a draft guy to see someone that I really liked during the pre-draft process that I knew was going to be on the shelf because of the ACL, make a big play on his literal 3rd snap in the NFL. All right, now I'm going to move to the AFC West here on All 32, Week 7's edition of All 32. Los Angeles Chargers. Now, they lost last week. It was at home. They wore those sweet yellow jerseys, and they just could not stop the Indianapolis Colts. defensively. Like the Colts did really whatever they wanted in that game. Saw a little hint of a comeback from Justin Herbert and company. They got down 2 scores, but were never able to get it within 1, I believe, in that contest. They lost, 38-24. Oronde Gadsden, if you're a Chargers fan, like that was the silver lining from this game, because the rookie tight end from Syracuse went over 100 yards, had 2 big plays against the Colts. And it was not just a flash in the pan, I don't think. This was not, hey, it was garbage time and they weren't really covering. They're playing soft zone. This was throughout this game. And then I went back and watched his film, and I was really, really impressed. It's kind of an interesting story. Obviously, his dad, Oronde Gadsden, was a cornerback for the Miami Dolphins, like in the 90s and 2000s, was a pretty good player. Now, Oronde Gadsden II is a lot bigger than his dad was, like 6'4", 243 at the combine, and was a former receiver at Syracuse. And then smartly, in his final season in Syracuse, he switched to tight end. He's like, I'm going to bulk up a little. I want to sell myself to NFL teams as a tight end. I believe he was a 5th round selection. I thought that's right around where he should have been picked. Not much yards after the catch in terms of contact balance or cutting skill, but he's kind of a deceptively fast long strider. I went back to look. The last 2 weeks, among all qualifying tight ends, Oronde Gadsden II is 2nd in the NFL in yards per route run. Among all tight ends. You go back 3 weeks, among all qualifying tight ends, Gadsden is 8th in yards per route run. And if you go back 4 weeks, so thinking, okay, maybe that was too small of a sample. Of course, with the 100-yard game, his yards per route run figure was big last week. You go back 4 weeks for Oronde Gadsden, he has the 6th highest yards per route run figure among all qualifying tight ends. So this is someone that I don't want to say has proven that he has staying power, because it's only been 3 or 4 weeks. But if you go back the last month, he has proven when he is on the field, he can be an efficient receiver down the seam for Justin Herbert. And then if he continues to materialize, you're talking about Keenan Allen, who has proven to kind of be a fountain of youth this year in LA with Justin Herbert and the Chargers. You know what Ladd McConkey can do. He can win at all 3 levels of the field with separation and yards after the catch skill. Quentin Johnston has blossomed into a pretty good receiver in year 3. It's taken him a while, but he's an asset in this offense. And then you throw in Oronde Gadsden as that seam stretcher, former receiver in college, getting down the seam at tight end. And suddenly Justin Herbert has a pretty fine collection of receivers. All right, that was the AFC side, and I did it in 37 minutes. I'm proud of myself. I'll go maybe a little faster, but then I realized I was like hurrying at the end of last week, and I was like, why does it have to be 1 hour? There's no reason for that. But this is all 32, week 7's edition. This is the show that I do on a weekly basis here in my home office, where I give you a stat nugget, a film observation. Usually we'll lean more advanced stats, because I think that's where we kind of are today in the media industry and what you fans understand and crave for your favorite teams. And I will give you one of those in a 1 to 3 minute segment. Maybe I'll give you 2 or 3 for all 32 teams. And I'm jumping over. That was just the AFC side. I'm jumping over to the NFC side now. Dallas Cowboys, NFC East. How about Javonte Williams and the fact that right now, to me, well, I guess I said the fact. It's not necessarily a fact. But to me, Javonte Williams, 7 weeks into this 2025 season, is the best value signing free agent in the NFL. The Cowboys signed him in March or April, whenever it was. A 1-year, $3 million deal with only $2 million guaranteed. And now this is coming when, the last couple of years, the running back value veteran market has just shot up. That those veterans are starting to get more money again. The Derrick Henrys, the Saquon Barkleys, the Josh Jacobs. 1 year, $3 million, $2 million guaranteed. Javonte Williams carried the football 19 times, went over 110 yards in the big blowout win at home over the Washington Commanders. He's averaging 5.3 yards per carry, and entering week 8, this 1 year, $2 million guaranteed running back is 2nd in the NFL in rushing to only Jonathan Taylor. So hats off to him for rebounding from that gruesome knee injury that he suffered in his 2nd season in Denver, and to the Dallas Cowboys front office for identifying him as a very low risk, high reward potential running back, because he has absolutely been that type. He's run a lot behind the 2 first-rounders, Tyler Guyton and Tyler Smith, and that makes a lot of sense because they're really good blockers. I noticed that watching the film in this Week 7 win over the Washington Commanders. A lot of the runs were either right off the left tackle or right behind Tyler Smith at left guard. But 5.3 yards per carry, second in the NFL in yards per rush, or in total rushing yards, 5.3 yards per rush. Javonte Williams, the best value signing free agent in the NFL to date. All right, Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles. I know what I want to talk about. Devontae Smith. Is he the best wide receiver 2 in football? Now, I get it. This reeks of recency bias. He goes over 180 yards, highest career total in a single game to date for Devontae Smith. But I think it's a worthwhile question because he's, to me, clearly the wide receiver 2. A.J. Brown. Now, the production maybe is not always like A.J. Brown is definitely the 1 and he's the 2. But in general, I think we all understand A.J. Brown is the one that's going to see the cornerback 1s for the other team and can really be that legitimate number 1 wideout. You have T. Higgins, you have Jordan Addison. Who else am I forgetting? There's George Pickens potentially within the same division, but over 180 yards. And what I wanted to focus on is that in that second season, Devontae Smith almost had 1,400 yards, counting the regular season and the playoffs. He had a yards per route run figure over 2. The last 2 years, the yards per route run figure for Devontae Smith was under 2. But right now, it is back over 2. And for the first time in his career, his contested catch win rate is over 50%. It's 60% right now for the 6 foot, 175-pound Devontae Smith, which, by the way, reminds me, I have always wondered this, and I'm not even I'm not making fun of Devontae Smith. I'm not judging him, but I always wondered. Devontae Smith was at Alabama for 4 years. He was just played 4 years, gradually got better, won the Heisman in his final season, which was, to me, super deserved. How was he 6 foot 170 going into the NFL draft? How was he just not asked to work out at Alabama? And then now, since he's been in the NFL, his body looks the exact same. It's just kind of crazy to me, but I will say the ultimate caveat here, it absolutely works. Whatever he's been doing, whatever he did in the SEC at Alabama, and whatever Devontae Smith has done or maybe not done in the NFL to stay super pliable and flexible and explosive and silky smooth, it works. It's just very strange, not only to see him on the field with every other player that looks like a sculpture, but that he's really effective. He's really efficient. He looks like a punter out there, but he is very tough to guard. He's making contested catch wins over these chiseled cornerbacks and safeties, and he's good after the catch. So Devontae Smith, hats off to you for doing whatever you've needed to do to be your own guy, be so unique, and maybe be the best wide receiver 2 in football. New York Giants. I just talked a few teams ago about Oronde Gadsden, a young tight end. I want to focus on Theo Johnson for the New York Giants. 3 catches for 66 yards, that ricochet touchdown in that absolutely bonkers loss in Denver. He has 4 touchdowns this season, 3 of which have come from Jackson Dart. And Theo Johnson and Dart, I think, have formulated very early on in their respective careers a pretty strong connection. I mean, and I think when you're Jackson Dart and you can lean on a 6'6", 260-pound tight end, and that's your kind of your go-to guy, especially with Malik Neighbors sidelined for the rest of the season, that is immensely valuable. That will lead to fewer sacks. That will lead to the Giants staying ahead of the sticks to get to 2nd and 3 instead of it being 2nd and 13 after a sack. Moving the chains on 3rd down, it's 3rd and 5. You just run a quick stick route. You find the hole in zone. Theo Johnson, I think, has the potential. He was a draft pick in 2024. We didn't see a lot from him in his rookie season, but that was kind of this story on him, that at Penn State, he was raw, but, and I mentioned how big he is. He was 6'6", 259 at the combine 2 years ago. His relative athletic score, Theo Johnson, was 9.99. He was as explosive as you are going to see at the tight end position. Now, he's not going to make guys miss like George Kittle or Travis Kelce in space. But once he turns on the accelerators, he is a long striding speedster relative to his size. So Giants fans, I know you just had your heart ripped out of your chest in that loss. And it was a great final drive from Jackson Dart. And by the way, I think you should be pretty excited if you're a Giants fan that even though you're 5-2, Jackson Dart is flashing. He's doing the bare, like what you need to have, the prerequisite, I think, to become a quality quarterback in the NFL. He is flashing in his rookie season. You do not need to take over the league. You do not need to win Offensive Rookie of the Year to eventually become a quality quarterback. You just can't look completely overwhelmed for the majority of your season. You got to flash. Dart is doing that. And Theo Johnson is kind of becoming, along with Wendell Robinson, obviously, becoming kind of a low-key important feature in this Jackson Dart offense. All right, so I talked about Washington Commanders. I thought I was done with the NFC East here. The Washington Commanders, I think they have, it doesn't seem that controversial, but I think the Washington Commanders have a cornerback problem. Like, that's something that maybe we see them make a trade again before the trade deadline. They traded for Marshawn Lattimore, who, frankly, at 29 years old, has not been great this season. He got completely torched by Pickens and CeeDee Lamb coming off injury this past week. Trey Amos, to me, the rookie, the third rounder from Ole Miss, is playing the best football of Lattimore, Mike Sainristil, and himself. Like, I think Trey Amos is the most consistent, and I think has been the most consistent. And I think that's a red flag if you're a Washington Commanders team that has, in year 2 of Jaden Daniels coming off an NFC title game appearance, its sights set on the Super Bowl. You need to be significantly better in the secondary when you're facing not only the high-powered Cowboys offense, but the Eagles offense and a lot of the other quality offenses, even in your own conference, the Rams, the Green Bay Packers, all the teams in the NFC North, frankly. The Seattle Seahawks are looking really good through the air with Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba having an all-pro caliber season. The cornerback room in Washington is my biggest concern. I think now you could say, hey, what about Jaden Daniels? Well, sure. Like, he needs to be healthy, and that's obvious. They needed him healthy regardless. Like, if they wanted to, have their sights legitimately and realistically set on making it to a Super Bowl. But even if Daniels returns and the hamstring's not a big deal and he's playing as we expect him to, the cornerback room, I think, is an issue at this stage. And we're seeing Sainristil kind of regress back to where we were, I don't want to say expecting, but he played out of his mind last season as a, outside corner when he was a lifetime, first wide receiver at Michigan and then a slot corner. He's regressed a little. Lattimore, I don't want to say is cooked at 29, but he just has not looked like in his prime Marshawn Lattimore. And when you're leaning on a third-round safety as like your best, or a third-round corner as your best defensive back, covering in man-to-man and zone, that's a problem. All right, moving now to the NFC North here on All 32. I'm Chris Trapasso, by the way. I don't think I said that at the beginning of the show. The Detroit Lions had a Jahmyr Gibbs game. Over 180 yards from offense, or it was like 200 yards from offense, 80 yards receiving on 3 catches, 82 yards, 130 yards on the ground. When he gets running, when he gets to the second level, Jahmyr Gibbs looks like the fastest player in the NFL. I'm pretty sure if you look at the next gen stats, like, he's up there in like the top 10 or 15 when you look at the fastest ball carriers. He seems like once he is free and in space and at full stride, I would put him in a race against anyone else in the NFL today and think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to win. He is averaging 5.1 yards per carry and 7.5 yards receiving. The Lions that had that kind of shaky start, they got throttled in week 1 in Lambeau Field against Micah Parsons and company. No Ben Johnson, no Aaron Glenn. Oh man, this team's not quite it. I feel like I kind of hinted at this last week that the Lions are going to be fine. Now they are starting to get the same injury bug that's infesting the defense like it did last year. But offensively, the offensive line is super good. Tate Ratledge, their day 2 pick from Georgia, has been an awesome add after they lose Jonah Jackson in free agency. He's been great. Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker, those guys up front can really move people. Even Christian Mahogany, the 6th rounder from BC a few years ago, playing good football. Jared Goff plays within himself, I think, more than any other quarterback in the NFL. Amon-Ra St. Brown didn't have the drops like he had a couple weeks ago, or I guess last week against the Chiefs. Jahmyr Gibbs, like we were kind of waiting. And me as someone that has Jahmyr Gibbs on one of my fantasy teams, I was waiting for this Jahmyr Gibbs game. That's what he can do. He can give you 200 plus if you block it up for him, and is, to me, the biggest home run threat, maybe just slightly more than Devon Achane at the running back position in today's NFL. Green Bay Packers. What do I want to say about or should I go Bears first? Green Bay Packers. Let's do them. All 4 of their wins, they've scored exactly 27 points. I thought that was just kind of interesting. And that Jordan Love has played mostly good football, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I don't think he's been quite as good as those numbers. I'm pretty sure his yards per attempt average is over 8. The completion percentage is fine. I feel like certain times where you wanted to see the Packers kind of make some more distance between them and their opponent on the scoreboard, he's not been able to do that. They've had some failed third downs, things like that. But maybe that's nitpicking because Jordan Love was super good last year, but just dealt with some injuries. What I'm really excited about for the Packers, and what I'm assuming Packers fans are really pumped about, is that right now the Packers have 4 receivers, or 4 players, I should say, on offense who have 15 or more catches. Christian Watson is going to return at some point. Jaden Reed has been out since week 1, week 2? So they're going to get both of those players back, and you still have Romeo Doubs, who to me is the best all-around receiver in terms of wide receiver skill on this team. Josh Jacobs has over 15 catches. And this is, Dontavian Wicks hasn't really been a big part of this offense. You have Matthew Golden, who's starting to show a little bit why he was a first-round pick. You have Tucker Kraft, who to me is like creeping up there into that elite tier at the tight end position. So this is a team that really wants to spread around the football. And that was kind of the adage and what we've seen with this club the last couple of years with that youth movement that they made at the skill positions in the draft, like 22 and 23. But they have 4 players with over 15 receptions right now, and they don't have 2 of their best receivers on the field yet. Christian Watson will return at some point. Jaden Reed will come off IR at some point, presumably. And in those vital months in November and December where you're jockeying for playoff seeding and seeing who's getting home games and who's winning divisions and things like that, they may have their full complement of wide receivers and pass catchers. And I think that will make this team even more dangerous than they've been in the first 7 weeks of the season, which I think they can be a little better, but I think they will be better once those 2 receivers return to the field. All right, Chicago Bears. What I want to talk about with the Chicago Bears, it's something that I harped on, I think, early on All 32, one of the first couple of episodes that I did, was that Caleb Williams, freaky talent. We see it every week. We see the arm strength. We see the crazy throws off platform. We see him running, throwing on the run, all that. Sometimes maybe he takes too big of risks where you're like, oh, okay, dial it back a little. You didn't need to make that throw before the end of the half. That could have been a pick when we have 3 points in our pocket, things like that. And he did that this past week, but they've won 4 in a row. The first 2 weeks, this is what I hinted at, that he needs to trust Ben Johnson. Caleb Williams needs to trust Ben Johnson, stay within the structure more frequently, and rely on the offensive scheme, the play design, and his skill position players to just make plays. I talked about DeAndre Swift in the past. I think last week's episode talked about Luther Burden. I think both of those players, especially Swift, has really taken or assumed a central figure role in Chicago. And I think Luther Burden will continue to get more reps and make a lot more big plays. But what Caleb Williams has done, I think he started to do that. He's shown that. The first 2 weeks, Caleb Williams had 8 scrambles. So 4 scrambles a game the first 2 weeks. 8 total scrambles in week 1 and week 2 for Caleb Williams. Since then, and is coinciding with the Bears' 4-game win streak, 4 scrambles. So he went down from 4 per game scrambling with the football to just 1 scramble per game for Caleb Williams. And if you watched him last year, it felt like he scrambled 10 times a game, especially during that 10-game losing streak. So yes, there are still some odd decisions from Caleb Williams, but I think there are also some tremendous throws and outstanding plays from him. But just those scrambling figures and the disparity in the first 2 weeks of the season compared to the last month when the Bears have won all 4 of their games, I think that is no coincidence that he is starting to understand and have faith in who I think is a brilliant play designer and play caller in Ben Johnson. Minnesota Vikings, with the Vikings, there's no advanced stat or anything that I have here, which is kind of unusual for what I want to do on all 32. But in just watching this team, the last 3 games with Carson Wentz, they're 1-2 with Carson Wentz at their quarterback position. Carson Wentz has made some good throws. The offense hasn't just gone completely into a shell. I think the Minnesota Vikings will be completely fine when J.J. McCarthy returns from injury. I don't know when that will be. It felt like it could have been either of the last 2 weeks, and it wasn't. And it really felt like it could have been this past week against the Eagles. Maybe the powers that be in Minnesota, or maybe Kevin O'Connell himself, are like, hey, maybe we don't want to throw him to the Philadelphia Eagles, even though they have lost a lot of pieces. I just feel like with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson healthy and Jordan Addison back from suspension, the offensive line playing well, Jordan Mason running well, and Brian Flores' defense that did get gashed a little bit by Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. I just think this team will be fine. I think we will get to a point probably by December where we'll say, oh, man, look, the Vikings have won 4 of their last 6 or 5 of their last 7, and they're right there in the thick of things in a hyper-competitive NFC North. And even if they've fallen too far behind and they're not going to be able to catch, let's say, by then the Lions or the Packers, they will be in the thick of things in the NFC wildcard race. I think they will be fine once J.J. McCarthy returns from injury. All right, so that was that all 4 teams? Yep, that was all 4 teams in the NFC North. So moving on here on all 32, thanks for watching. And again, if you're just tuning in after the live stream, go down to the bottom, go down here, look in the description, and you will see a clickable timestamp to your team to watch your segment to see what I said about them this week here on all 32. NFC South. Carolina Panthers are like sneaky hot. They've won a couple games in a row. Now they are going to play the Bills coming off a bye week, and the Bills have been very good coming off the bye in the Sean McDermott era. The Bills have lost 2 straight. They're not going to play with Bryce Young, suffered the high ankle sprain, but maybe Andy Dalton can be just a serviceable stopgap player for the next couple weeks while Bryce Young nurses himself back to health. But I don't want to talk about that specifically. I want to talk about Nick Scarton, the 2nd round pick that the Panthers selected. They picked him at number 51 overall. He was my number 33 overall player, just outside my top 32. I had like the late 1st, early 2nd round grade on him coming out of Texas A&M, formerly of Purdue. Nick Scarton was like listed at like 6'3", 270, and then he weighed in like way less at the combine. And I don't know if that like made people be a little weary. Oh, did he try to shed too much weight? Was he really playing bigger and now he's not going to be as powerful? I don't know. I didn't think he should have lasted all the way until pick 51, obviously. They had to make a lot of additions to that defensive front. They get Derek Brown back from injury. They picked Princely Umanmielen from Ole Miss, who I thought was just a very high floor edge rusher from Florida and Ole Miss. But Scarton this past week had a pressure rate of 23.1%, 6 quarterback pressures, which raised his pressure rate for the season up to 9.2. And if you've watched me, if you followed me on Twitter, read any of my articles, I've kind of tried to repeatedly outline, if you're an edge rusher, you want your pressure rate to be 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. You're getting close to 20. You're an elite edge rusher in the NFL. So 9.2 is not great. But I think for a 2nd rounder that was playing kind of a low volume rotational role in this first month of the season, and now he's starting to ramp up and play more, being close to 10% is very good. And he's coming off an outstanding performance. And it's all there with Scarton. He can win with bend. He can win with bull rush. He showed a great cross swipe against Armand Membu, the 7th pick in the draft at right tackle for the Jets to win, to get to Justin Fields. He plays with his hair on fire. There is no problem with his motor. He's going to constantly be at 100 miles per hour on the field. So I just wanted to highlight a specific player there in what is an improving Panthers defense and an improving Panthers team entering this Week 8 game against the Buffalo Bills. Next team in the NFC South here on all 32 is the New Orleans Saints. They've been pesky. I said it a couple weeks ago. I said, this team is not going to win a lot of games, but I don't think they're going to get blown out very often because Spencer Rattler has quarterback amnesia. He will just throw a pick. The next drive, he will try the same throw against the same coverage. He has no fear. And I respect it. I tweeted that during that Bears-Saints game that I respect the hell out of Spencer Rattler as a second-year former fifth-round pick who has a backup quarterback who's older than him waiting in the wings. That was a second-rounder, Tyler Shuck. And he's just out there firing. He had 6 turnover-worthy plays against the Bears, which was clearly way too high. And it really was not indicative of the type of carelessness that he's played with over the last couple of games. In the 2 previous games against the Patriots and the Bills, Spencer Rattler did not have a turnover-worthy play. And then he had 6 against the Chicago Bears. So I want to focus on that. I still think Rattler is fine for this rebuilding Saints team. I don't think they need to go to Tyler Shuck at this point. Chris Olave, so much buzz about him potentially being traded, and then you kind of get the refuting reports that, oh, no, he's only 25. The Saints want him part of their future. They're going to be working on a contract extension. I don't know if that makes an immense amount of sense for this team, but whether you're going with Rattler, whether you hope Tyler Shuck is the guy at like 27 years old next year, or you just want to draft someone early in 2026 in April, yeah, sure. It will be nice to have a 26-year-old Chris Olave there because the last 2 weeks, and I'm just going to throw in this quick advanced stat here, back-to-back weeks for Chris Olave with a yards per route run figure over 3. So he has shown, hey, I'm healthy and I can win at all 3 levels. I can win with separation. I have good hands. He's not going to give you a ton after the catch, but in today's NFL, getting open and just catching the football are very, very vital to any receiver and any pass game and any quarterback. And now, to me, I would be concerned about the concussions if I was thinking about a long-term deal with him because he's probably 1 concussion away from maybe having to retire. I don't know. He's had a bunch of concussions, both at Ohio State and in the pros. I think at Ohio State too, but certainly a bunch in the NFL. But the last couple of weeks, Chris Olave has looked 100% healthy back-to-back weeks with a yards per route run figure over 3. So he is running routes and producing yards at an efficient clip the last 2 weeks. The Falcons, Atlanta Falcons. This is general what I have for them. I think the offense, the pistol-based offense, is too gimmicky. It makes sense when you watch them score on a touchdown drive. You're like, okay, I get it. They threw it to Bijan 3 times. They gave it to him 4 times in the backfield. They threw to Drake London 3 times. That was the offense. But I think we saw coming off the win over the Bills on Monday Night Football the week before, even against a San Francisco 49ers defense that has a ton of injuries, no Nick Bosa, no Fred Warner, that a lot of young players, first and second year guys with Robert Saleh coordinating the defense, they were really able to keep Michael Penix in the pocket and really corral Bijan Robinson, relatively speaking, in this game. Bijan Robinson has 16 targets behind the line of scrimmage entering week 8, and Drake London's average depth of target is only 9.9 yards, which the first 4 seasons of his career, it was over 11 and close to 12. So that is a huge difference in terms of average depth of target in yards, that he's under 10, just under 10 at 9.9. This is Drake London. And he was always over 11 in his first couple seasons first 3 seasons in the NFL, 22, 23, and 24. So it's very gimmicky. It's very watch Bijan Robinson. And if he splits out to the left, they're probably going to throw him a screen. And if they don't, it's going to be a comeback to Drake London or a slant to Drake London. Kyle Pitts did get involved, and I think that's going to be important for this team to get back on track. But after the game against the Bills, and really how good the Bills defense played in the second half of that contest, I think it kind of laid the blueprint, and the 49ers were able to execute that much better throughout the duration of a game than Buffalo did. That's kind of the blueprint where you just really zero in on the underneath pass game. Bijan Robinson and Drake London isn't maybe being utilized to, I guess I'll say, to the best of his abilities, because he is a monster rebounder. He has Mike Evans level ability in the contested catch game. So you can throw him the football down the field. Just because he's not a 4-3 guy does not mean Drake London is not a deep threat. So I wonder if Zach Robinson, their offensive coordinator, that obviously has roots with Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. If he tweaks things or he just stays pistol-based and that's just the offense, they're like, look, we have Darnell Mooney back, which he made a play or two, but still has not gotten reacclimated to the offense. Other receivers are like David Sills and Casey Washington. I wonder if they're just like, this is what we have to do because we are a star-based team. We have all these, top 10 selections at the skill positions that we can't lean on our depth. But I wonder if that's going to ultimately spell some problems for this team down the stretch in Atlanta. All right, last team here on all 32 in the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'll be short and sweet with this, and it's completely fine. Baker Mayfield just had an off game. He just did not have a good game against the Lions. His adjusted completion rate was 59.6% against the Lions. That is like unbelievably low. Like throughout the course of a season, the lowest quarterbacks are normally like in the high 60s. And I'm talking of the 40 quarterbacks that normally play throughout a season, I'm talking like 38, 39, and 40 are normally like in the high to maybe mid 60s. So for Baker to be under 60% adjusted completion rate in one singular game, very uncharacteristic for him. Good job by the Lions. Now, Mike Evans gets hurt early. Chris Godwin still is not back. Maybe Emeka Egbuka was not at 100%. I know it surprised a lot of people, and maybe a lot of fantasy owners were happy and then ultimately bummed to first see him that he was going to play and then ultimately not get a big performance out of him. But Baker Mayfield just had an off game. There was a couple throws that could have, I don't want to say completely changed that game and maybe they sneak out of Detroit with a win, but could have changed the complexion of that game had he thrown those passes on target. And one positivity point here, Tez Johnson needs to be a bigger part of this offense. Nothing against Sterling Shepard. I know he has the connection with Baker dating all the way back to the Oklahoma days, but Tez Johnson is a lightning bug. He's 5'7", 150, but we saw it early in the return game, and then he had the touchdown. He is not fun to try to corral in space, and I think we should see more of Tez Johnson and maybe less of Sterling Shepard as the Buccaneers deal with a bunch of injuries at the receiver group. We're not going to get Mike Evans. I think I saw the report that's not going to be until maybe toward the end of the season. It didn't say out for the year. It said out for most of the year, the report that I saw earlier on Twitter. So you're going to get Chris Godwin back. Emeka Egbuka looks like a stud wide receiver as a rookie. Got to get him healthy too. But how about more Tez Johnson in the slot? You'll get Bucky Irving back too, which is a huge part of this offense. But really just beyond the Tez Johnson push, the campaign that I'm on, that he needs to be a bigger part of the offense, I'm chalking up this loss for the Buccaneers, who have otherwise been very good this season and have won in those clutch moments. Just an off game for Baker Mayfield. All right, last team here. We're a little over an hour. That's completely fine. Last division here on All 32, Week 7's edition, the show that I give you a little 1 to 3 minute segment, a take, general observation, or an advanced stat for all 32 teams. NFC West. You can talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba with the Seattle Seahawks. He's been awesome. But with the Seattle Seahawks, I want to mention and highlight the offensive tackles, Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross, and the game plan for the job that both of those elements did in really limiting Danielle Hunter more so and Will Anderson in the Week 7 win over the Houston Texans. That to me is the best pass rushing tandem on the outside in the NFL, Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. Now, Will Anderson did have the strip sack and the touchdown in the end zone in like the third quarter, I believe. Beyond that, though, including that, Anderson and Hunter combined for 3 pressures on 54 pass rush snaps in this game. There are so many times where you're watching an NFL game, and whether it's one player, whether it's Micah Parsons or TJ Watt or Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, where you see those players have 8, 9, 10 pressures, 3 or 4 sacks, and you're like, how can this team that they're facing go into this game plan and not say, we can't let Max Crosby beat us, we can't let Myles Garrett beat us, and they do. Well, the Seahawks had the opposite game plan. Not only were Lucas and Charles Cross really good themselves, so much help with extra chips and tight formations, tight splits to just not give those rushers a runway to Sam Darnold. So hats off to the individuals on the field, obviously, for executing, but the game plan. And watching that film back this morning was very impressed. Like I was like, man, like seeing the numbers at first, I was like, did Lucas and Charles Cross just have the two best games of their career? And they're two good blockers, but I wasn't expecting them to allow 3 pressures on 54 collective pass rush snaps for Hunter and Anderson. They did a good job, but so much help from AJ Barner, from just tight splits. Just the formation alone can give those tackles a lot more of an advantage against the edge rushers of those elite caliber like Danielle Hunter and like Will Anderson. And I think it was a big reason why the Seahawks won that game handily. Next team, San Francisco 49ers, the Seattle Seahawks, maybe biggest rival, we'll say. I think Bryce Huff could be the guy that, in a way, saves the 49ers pass rush and maybe their entire defense, because we mentioned earlier, obviously no Nick Bosa, no Fred Warner, which is absolutely crushing. Those are 2 all-pro caliber players, 2 of the best players at their positions in the NFL. So many young players on defense. If you watch that game in prime time, it was, man, like Robert Saleh is just dealing with so many young players. He's coaching so many of these young guys. Bryce Huff had 5 quarterback pressures in their win, and he has a pressure rate of 14.1%, which is getting up there. You want to be around 15 or so percent if you're an edge rusher, and a really successful one, an excellent one, is usually in the 15 to 20% range. Bryce Huff, just 2 years ago, was like that guy for the Jets where you're like, man, he's undrafted out of Memphis. He doesn't, or was he a 7th rounder? No, I think he was undrafted out of Memphis. And he's really good. He deserves to get a big money contract. He ultimately goes to Philadelphia and doesn't really work out, was inactive during the Super Bowl last year, but made some plays, just was never a full-time player. I think he was dealing with some injuries. The 49ers make a savvy signing to bring him onto this team. He's still relatively young, leads the team in pressures now with Nick Bosa injured, 14% pressure rate for Bryce Huff. He's finally in that number 1 rusher role that everyone kind of felt like, hey, he can be that number 1 rusher. He was just alongside so many future or former first rounders in New York and in Philadelphia. Never really got that opportunity. Now he's getting the opportunity, and Bryce Huff is producing. Los Angeles Rams, second to last team here on Week 7's edition of All 32. I'm Chris Trapasso. Los Angeles Rams, I need to focus on Kobe Turner, because I think when you are watching the Rams, you first think of the Puka Nacua, Matt Stafford connection. It's super good. Puka Nacua missed this past game in London. The Rams won handily. You think of Devontae Adams, has a couple touchdowns in that game. He still got it. He shows that he can still make ridiculous catches. He's still a great route runner into his 30s. And then you flip to the defensive side and you go, man, they had Aaron Donald. He's probably the best defensive tackle ever. But last season, they were great on defense. Oh, man, Jared Verse, reigning defensive rookie of the year. The 2nd rounder that year, Braden Fisk, defensive tackle out of Florida State. Great rusher up the field. Do not forget about Kobe Turner. He was the 2023 runner-up to Will Anderson for defensive rookie of the year. He had 6 quarterback pressures in the win over the Jacksonville Jaguars and is registering a pressure on 11.2% of his pass rush snaps. So I mentioned earlier, edge rushers, you want to be between, let's say, 13 to 17% and inch near 20 if you're an elite level rusher, or if you're a pass rushing specialist, not rushing a ton, low volume, you obviously want your pressure rate to be a little higher. At defensive tackle, if you're at 10%, both as a prospect or in the NFL, if you're a defensive tackle, you're at 9.8%, 10.3, 10.8. That's really, really good. And Kobe Turner is at 11.2%. I think he is just as important to this defense as Jared Verse. I really think that. Jared Verse, I've said this repeatedly, that I think he has multiple future All-Pros in his career. I think he will be a 2 or 3-time All-Pro in his career. I think he's that good. Kobe Turner, maybe because there's so many good defensive tackles today, maybe he's never an All-Pro, but he is a damn good player that plays a lot of snaps, is great against the run, and is an awesome pass rusher at defensive tackle next to Braden Fisk. And I'm sure Braden Fisk, even though he's probably around the same age because he was an older prospect, has one fewer season in the NFL than Kobe Turner, is probably soaking up a lot of what Kobe Turner learned during that runner-up Defensive Rookie of the Year campaign that Turner had in 2023. And the last team here on Week 7's edition of All 32, the Arizona Cardinals. I need more from Marvin Harrison Jr. Last week, I theorized that this offense is better with Jacoby Brissett than Kyler Murray. Maybe that's hot takey, but back-to-back weeks, I think Jacoby Brissett, if you told me, hey, he's the starter, yeah, there's no Kyler Murray, he got traded, I'd be like, yeah, this offense actually looks pretty good. Back-to-back weeks of that, Jacoby Brissett making a lot of big-time throws inside the pocket, even when he's under pressure, typically making good decisions, not getting sacked a ton. But Marvin Harrison Jr. has 3 or fewer catches in 4 of 7 games this season. That can't be the case. I mean, especially, and maybe you don't want to do this or it's unfair to do this, but as a draft guy, I'll do it. Looking at what Malik Neighbors, and it was kind of like the debate in the 2024 draft cycle, who's the better receiver prospect? Is it Neighbors? Is it Marvin Harrison Jr.? Malik Neighbors was like getting 15 targets a game and having 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 catches a game last season in New York, and had a few big games early on before he tore his ACL this season with the Giants. You cannot be Marvin Harrison Jr., I think he should be the clear number one focal point of this offense. You have Trey McBride there, obviously a tight end who's an elite level tight end, but 2 catches this past week, the week before, 2 catches. Marvin Harrison Jr., whether it's Jacoby Brissett, whether it's Marvin Harrison Jr. himself or the game plan, I just need to see more Marvin Harrison Jr. and make those big catches down the stretch. So the Cardinals, a team that's lost, 4 games in a row by 13 total points, I think is the fewest total points that a team has lost 4 consecutive games in NFL history. You want your big-time draft pick that is the 6'3", 220 freaky specimen to have more than 2 receptions or 3 receptions per game. So I need more from Marvin Harrison Jr. if I'm an Arizona Cardinals quarterback or I'm an Arizona Cardinals fan. So that concludes today's episode. Hopefully you liked it. I'm Chris Trapasso. This was Week 7's edition of All 32. Make sure to like and subscribe to get this video every single week, either Tuesday or Wednesday when there's not anything going on in the NFL. Game-wise, there'll probably be trades and a lot going on over the next couple weeks before that early November trade deadline. But like and subscribe to get this video every single week. And make sure, if you just want to watch your team's 3-minute segment, click below the description, and I will have the clickable timestamps for you. Thanks again for watching. Chris Trapasso. This was All 32. Thanks again.